next step. So I'm curious, like you kind of casually mentioned, okay, so I graduate and I work for the Lakers. So like walk us through how does that actually happen? Like how do you go from you want to work for an agency, all of a sudden now you're basically on the court with Kobe Bryant?
Yeah. No, great. So here's how it happened. And I'll be very, very practical here. I made a list of every single NBA team because in my mind, I still wanted to be an agent. Okay. This is really important. Just because the initial path to being an agent wasn't going to happen. Be an agent, work at an agency, then become an agent. Now I had to figure out, well, how can I navigate? And this is part of the whole journey of my career. Is I was like, well, what do I need to do then to set myself up to be an agent? I'd interned at agencies. I'd worked the events. I'd worked the high school tournaments. I had done all these things, but I knew that agents are connected with all the teams. So I was like, okay, well, let me make a list of every NBA team that I'd want to work with in order from 1 to 30.
Yeah.
Lakers. I'm a diehard Laker fan. I grew up in Los Angeles. Like we have a room in my parents' house. It's called the Lakers room. All right. It's painted purple and gold. Nice. There's memorabilia, man. Like I grew up with a cardboard cutout of Kobe watching me play video games. Like we're huge fans. So I was like, okay, Lakers are number one and they're in LA. So I don't have to fly out of the state or whatever.
Right.
So I start reaching out and I realized that one of the guys who I'd invited to speak at a sports business meeting, he was the executive director of corporate partnerships. So I connected with him. I found out there was another person from USC in the corporate partnerships division. So I was like, okay, well, what division excites me? There's the basketball side of things. There's the business side of things. I was like, well, corporate partnerships kind of is in the intersection between both. And that could be the easiest avenue, at least for now, because I know somebody there. So I reach out and I just go to set up a pure conversational chat. Wasn't going to ask for anything because I didn't even think they had jobs available. Like it's the Lakers, right? And I'm chatting with this girl and she tells me, oh, we're going to be looking for 3 assistants for the start of the season. Like, is this something you've ever thought of? And I'm like, now that you mention it, I would love to be considered, right? So I'm like, well, what do I need to do? So I'm on this just networking call and all of a sudden she's telling me there might be an opportunity to interview. So I said, what do I need to do? And she tells me some things to do. So I'm like, done. You got it. Yeah, of course, I do everything that she says to the best of my ability. And then a few weeks later, the interview process starts and I end up getting that job. So the way I got that was literally, I said, who do I want to work for? Where do I want to be? And what's going to help me get closer to my goal? Because I was like, if I work for the Lakers, I put that on the resume. That's amazing. It's going to be Kobe's final season, which means there's going to be a lot of opportunities. And number 3, depending on what I do as my responsibility, I can meet a lot of people who go to the Laker games. I can meet my agents and contacts, and I can kind of, see what deals I could produce. So I ended up doing that. And part of my job for the Lakers was I was a corporate partnerships assistant, meaning on game days, I picked all the contestants. So half court shot, skills challenge.
No way.
So I got to do all that.
That's epic.
Now, this is where it starts to get interesting because here I am, I'm doing this. I'm loving it. I'm realizing that people is just like, that's what I'm good at is people.
Yeah.
So there's one day though, that I'm going down here. All right. And this is how we're talking about the evolution of what happens in your journey when you least expect it. So now I'm going down to the elevator to pick a contestant. All right. Now this contestant was going to meet me down and they were shooting for 95,000 or something. If they make it 95K, like the crowd's going to go nuts. So I'm pumped about this. Right. I get in the elevator and it's just me and the attendant. All right. It's just me and the attendant. We're just sitting in the elevator and I'm like, all right, cool. Look, what's up, bro? He goes, how you doing? I'm like, good. Event level, please. Well, right as the doors close, a hand walks in, a hand opens and the doors open up. And I'm like, uh-oh, who's coming in right now? Like, I got to get down. And it's Jerry West. Now I'm starting to panic because Jerry West is the NBA logo. I mean, he is the guy. He is a living legend. Yeah. And so now I'm a 22-year-old assistant and my heart's just pumping out of my chest. I'm sweating. I mean, I have pictures of him in the house I grew up in, right? So it's me, Jerry, and the elevator attendant. And the person working the elevator, he looks at Jerry and he goes, excuse me. He has no idea who he is. He goes, what floor would you like to go to? Jerry says, the event level. I mean, he's got courtside seats, right? Like he's Jerry West.
Yeah.
And the person working the elevator looks back at him and says, well, do you have a credential? Because if not, I'm going to have to ask you to step off because this young man pointing at me now has work to do. And I'm like, oh no, he didn't. like, no way. Jerry looks at him and he's like, no, I don't have a credential, but do you know who I am? And I'm like, oh my God. The person working the elevator says, no, sir, I don't, but I need you to step off. Now, this is one of those moments where at the time you don't think anything of it, but now looking back, this is a game-changing moment.
Yeah.
Jerry's about to walk off the elevator and I go, wait, he's my guest. I'll escort him down. And the person working the elevator is kind of looking at me like, dude, why haven't you said hi to him if he's your guest? You know what I mean? Like, why are you in awkward silence all the time? And so he says, are you sure? Because he's not going to question me. Like, I got the credential. And so I look at Jerry and I kind of like, what do you think? And he's like, yeah. And so I look back and I'm like, yeah. The next 14 seconds, dude. I mean, greatest elevator ride ever. But here's where it gets exciting. I start to panic because I'm wondering, like, oh my God, Jerry's going to be so mad right now. He's going to be pissed at the person that didn't know who he was. He's going to be pissed at me for trying to stand up for him and like escort him down. Like, I don't know what's about to happen. Right as we were about to go our separate ways, he sticks out his hand. He shakes my hand. And he says, thank you. I appreciate what you just did for me. And it was in that moment where I was like, holy smokes. Like Jerry West, the NBA logo, just told me, a bottom of the totem pole employee, that he appreciates me for taking him down the elevator.
Yeah.
It was in that moment that I realized the power of one interaction, the power that one person can have over somebody in our life. And it made me think about this, that we all want the same thing in our life. We want to be loved. We want to be heard. We want to feel that we matter. We want to belong. We want to feel valued. And Jerry West in that moment gave me that feeling. Doesn't matter that he's the NBA logo Hall of Fame player and I'm in student loan debt trying to figure out what the heck is going on in my life. But that continued to start me on, how do I give people more opportunities? I've now turned this into, how do I create the feeling of elevation in others? How do I elevate people in every interaction that I have? Well, a few weeks go by and I keep starting to think about this.
Yeah.
And one thing leads to the next. And that's what started the next phase of my journey of, okay, well, what other ideas are out there? Led me to a book, led me to starting this basketball event. But all of these things come from experiences when you take a chance, when you put yourself out there, when you see an opportunity and you go for it, regardless of what the outcome could be. And that's what it's all about when it comes to like figuring out, how do we move forward? How do we take that next step to continue to advance and grow in this pursuit of greatness?
Love that. That is the most ridiculous story ever. Jerry West, he's my guest. That's ridiculous. I hope you've have you ever reconnected with him after that? And been
I haven't, but like someday he's going to hear one of these interviews and he's going to be like, oh dude, I remember that kid.
Yeah.